Okay, so do not use Google's apps unless you really dependent on it or you're on iOS 27. So yes, I'm telling you guys. What's up guys, iOS Expert 649, and yeah, I would highly recommend guys you do not use Google's apps on any version other than iOS 27 beta unless you really have to, because if you take a look at, like, Gmail's a bad one. Gmail's a bad one because if I go to the App Store, right, so if I go to the store, you'll see that Gmail requires iOS 18.0 or later. Well, the reason why saying only use on iOS 27 then, well, it is because of this keyboard. This keyboard right here. This is a bad one because I like it when applications support large amount of iOS versions. So like iOS 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, of course 26 and 27. I like it when applications support a high amount of iOS versions. Well, to me this looks like the iOS 26 keyboard looks like this, right? So you get the liquid glass keyboard and all liquid glass features, and versus this, and if I were to look at a version before iOS 18, right? Before iOS 18, you would get an older version of this application. I tried writing a review about this, a bad review about this app, but they did not really, they responded with, "We apologize," and that apology obviously meant bullshit. It meant absolute bullshit, and this keyboard remains here. This keyboard remains here. The UI looks pretty outdated, which is not what you would expect for a modern app. On top of that, furthermore, if you looked at the old versions, you can't get it on the old version either. Like Gmail, like if I wanted to get it on iOS 16 or even iOS 17, you just can't unless you were willing to download an older version. Obviously, I do on my iPhone 8. I have an older version on that, but you can see here the keyboard's not optimized for iOS 26, and this doesn't just apply to Gmail. I'm just telling you that Gmail's about, unless if it's a really old version like iOS 13, it probably wouldn't work at all. It probably would not work at all. It probably would not work at all on the iOS 13. It would basically probably most likely tell you to update the application, but obviously the current version requires iOS 18 or later, and the keyboard is iOS 16, or has the iOS 18 or 16 keyboard. I'm really not sure, but does not have the new keyboard. This really pisses me off because I like it when an app supports a large number of iOS versions. That I really like. I like it when the app supports a large number of iOS versions. And this to me looks like it only supports iOS 18. It really doesn't properly support anything other than the iOS 27 and iOS 18. Those are the only two versions it supports. Again, look at this keyboard. Like the way it's supposed to look like is something like Firefox. If I open Firefox, it's not a third-party apps issue. As you can see, the Firefox has the 26 keyboard, and even Gmail has the iOS 18 keyboard. And I know YouTube doesn't like to work on older iOS versions. Like YouTube does not like older iOS versions. I know on iOS 12 and 13 it would tell you to update the application or the iOS version in general just to use the app. But again, YouTube's a little more forgiving, as it does allow you to go back to, I think it's iOS 16, so something like my iPhone 8 would work fine. YouTube is a little more forgiving, as it does go back to iOS 16, but I mean, application app support is still pretty bad, because like that means older iOS versions, it's not gonna work. And also Gmail, and also 26, it gives you the iOS 18 keyboard and the older UI on iOS 26, which you might think is good, but like it's kind of, I like it when it supports a wide number of iOS versions. And Google seems like they want to support as little iOS versions as possible. I like it when Google supports as much iOS versions as possible. And I'm really pissed off because, it seems to me that like Google is attempting to support as little iOS versions as possible. Can you see the issue here? So like, you look at iOS 18, or iOS 26 keyboard, or on iOS 26 you get that iOS 18 keyboard, but if that's kind of twisted, don't you think? You go back to iOS 17, iOS 17 does not work for Gmail, but iOS 26 does not really work because of this. So that limits you to iOS 27, which I will show you. I won't show you, but basically iOS 27 would give you the iOS 26 keyboard. So like that's kind of twisted, like it gives you the iOS 18 keyboard here, and also here. And I'm really unhappy with this. Because, yeah, I'm calling this out because, like, YouTube and Gmail, they, like, obviously YouTube would get a lot of backlash if they discontinued iOS 16 support, and I would make a whole other video about this if they, I'd make a whole nother video about this if they did discontinue iOS 16 support without updating this keyboard. And that to me is absolutely twisted. And it seems to me that YouTube is trying to support as little iOS versions as possible, when many people like myself want YouTube to support as much iOS versions as possible. But you know what I mean? Like, not everybody has iOS 18, and that rule is going to get broken if they don't install iOS 27 beta. And it seems to me that YouTube and Gmail and Google and all those other trash bags are trying to support as little iOS versions as possible. I want them to support as much iOS versions as possible. And I noticed that my iPad Air 2 on iOS 13, you have to use it through Safari. I have to watch YouTube through Safari or through a third-party app. And that's a little bit annoying, and something obviously I'm going to have to fix through a jailbreak. And that's obviously something I'm going to have to fix through a jailbreak. Yeah, and I'm really not happy with this. Given the fact that, yeah, Gmail and YouTube doesn't really, they really, YouTube, iPads and stuff, they're going to have to support other versions of iOS. So I'm happy that they did support at least down iOS 16. But it seems to me that Gmail on the other hand, Gmail, they really don't want you using any other version other than the version they want you to use. And it seems like 18 is the only version they're supporting natively. And the only way to bypass it is to upgrade to iOS 27 Beta 1. And that is BETA, guys. BETA. They really don't want you using any other version other than iOS 18. And I'm making this video just to call it out. And I don't know why. I am really mad. And you know what? I'm just going to delete Gmail. Because I'm just going to delete Gmail because I can't even use it on iOS 16. I cannot even use Gmail on iOS 16, guys. I mean, obviously it's not broken on iOS 26, but the keyboards not the correct keyboard. You know what I mean? So I deleted Gmail. YouTube, on the other hand, I kind of need to have YouTube on this phone, so, you know, I'm kind of locked in, so I have no choice but to deal with it. So, yeah, thank you for watching, and peace out.